You said a few weeks ago that the gig was up for the First Minister, but he's still there. Can he continue?
He can't. He can't command the confidence of the Senedd. He lost a vote of no confidence. His own party is completely divided under his leadership, unable to agree on anything. And it's quite clear he's going to really, really struggle to be able to pass a budget. And the idea that we can just limp on for 2 years until that next Senedd election, unable to govern, unable to legislate, unable to unite, for the sake of one man's ego, is absurd.
Before we get on to kind of what happens next, what have been your reflections on this week? You know, Hannah Blythen's statement was really quite remarkable, and then again those scenes kind of reversed the following day with Vaughan Gething stood up and her shaking her head behind him.
It was a really brave statement, I thought, from Hannah Blythen, and I commend her for making it. I think what lies at the heart of this issue, there's a number of different threads, but the one thing I would really want to pick up on is Vaughan Gething previously said that this chat was a party political chat, and therefore he didn't need to provide it to the COVID inquiry as part of their evidence when looking at decisions taken through the pandemic, and that's why it was okay to delete the messages in the way he suggested. What we've now seen in the defence from the First Minister, instead of that, is he's saying, well, actually, no, this was a ministerial chat, and therefore I've used the ministerial code to sack Hannah Blythen. Now, both those things can't be true.
Well, no, to be fair, isn't what he's saying that essentially the breach of trust of this information coming from her phone is the breaking of the ministerial code?
Well, this is why we've tabled a debate for next week under the Government of Wales Act to ensure that Vaughan Gething releases the evidence that he made that decision based upon, because that is really important. He's failed to do that. You mentioned the scrutiny of the First Minister Committee that happened on Friday. Vaughan Gething didn't seem to think it was his place to kind of clarify these inaccuracies or the contrasts, if you like, between Hannah Blythen's claims and his own, and that's what this evidence is intended to do.
On that, Tom, I do wonder whether both of them can be right here. We notice very careful use of language by both of them. She says she's never briefed the media, she's not, Nation companies say she's not the source. But what Vaughan Gething is saying is that it came from her phone. Presumably we're left to, fill in the gaps here, that there was a third party involved. But they could both be telling the truth here, couldn't they?
Well, I think the problem is what you've said in your question there, the words presumably and fill in the gaps. This is the First Minister of Wales, who is quite content, I think, to hope the story moves on and to leave ambiguity and grey areas. That's not the role of the First Minister. It's about transparency, and it's about openness, and it's about telling people exactly what's happened and why he's come to the decision he has, particularly when the minister or former minister involved completely denies it. I think that's really important. Vaughan Gething seems to have a continual issue with transparency, scrutiny and openness in the 3 months he's been the First Minister.
You mentioned earlier Vaughan Gething getting frustrated in that committee meeting. I can understand why he's frustrated. He's not talking about the things he wants to talk about. I think it's fair to say that this issue on the leaks isn't about his integrity, is it? That it's fascinating to watch it all play out, but where do we go now then? We've got this. Where will the release of this evidence actually lead to?
Well, look, I understand Vaughan Gething doesn't want to talk about this, but frankly, in the 3 months he's been in charge, we've talked about this issue with Hannah Blythen and the release and the deletion of messages to the COVID inquiry. We've talked also about accepting £200,000 from a convicted criminal who we later found out had a £400,000 loan from the Development Bank of Wales. So First Minister beset by scandal and division in the 3 months he has been in charge. The idea that we can just move on in the way the First Minister wants and talk about whatever he wants to talk about isn't the way this works. His track record shows everything he touches turns to you-know-what.
Well, we'll fill in the gaps. The audience can fill in that gap, shall we? Right then, okay, so you're not going to drop this as the opposition, we can see there. I wanted to ask you about the future of your own party, and it's the 25 years of the Senedd celebrated this week. There's lots of people within your party who would like to see the place abolished, or some people, you know, where there is this void now, a vacuum in your party, where you go next. How are you going to placate that?
Well, you know, the first thing I would say is the Senedd is here to stay. And actually, from a Welsh Conservative perspective, we've seen the results last week. And, you know, people like me wouldn't be on this programme. There wouldn't really be full-time elected Welsh Conservative representatives in Wales had it not been for the Senedd. So we've got a real opportunity, I think, to help build back the party. Really disappointing set of results, no question about it. But we were in second place in terms of the number of people that voted for us. And I hope that provides us then with a platform for 2026 and those Senedd elections to be able to increase our numbers.
Tom Giffard from the Welsh Conservatives, thank you very much for coming in this morning.